Welcome to YIMBY Nation, a podcast exploring U.S. housing and the roadblocks to building more equitable neighborhoods. Join Jimmy, Peter, and V as they, and special guests, offer their unique perspectives on building more diverse communities and addressing the social problems that emanate from the lack of decent, safe, and affordable housing. Our hosts have served in the fields of advocacy and nonprofit, public, and private development, and are driven by their passion for community empowerment. Join the conversation and share your thoughts on social using hashtag YIMBYNation.
Hi, and welcome to YIMBY Nation. Today, we are very excited to have with us Susan Bysiewicz. Susan Bysiewicz is the Connecticut's 109th Lieutenant Governor. She was sworn in for her second term on January 4th, 2023. A business lawyer and a job creator, she has helped over 60 companies secure millions in capital and create thousands of jobs. Working alongside Governor Ned Lamont, she's a strong advocate for women's health, education, and fair elections. Proud of her immigrant heritage, Susan grew up on a farm in Middletown, Connecticut, where she learned the value of hard work and persistence. She is a graduate of Yale University and Duke Law School, and an author of a biography on Ella Grasso, Connecticut's 83rd governor. Today, she continues her dedication to Connecticut's future by focusing on economic growth, supporting small businesses, and advocating for women, veterans, and families across the state. On behalf of Jimmy, Peter, and myself, welcome to YIMBY Nation, Susan, and we are very excited to have you join us today.
Well, thank you so much. It's lovely to be with you.
Susan, you've had a remarkable career in public service and community engagement. How did your early experiences shape your level of commitment and dedication to public services?
Well, I'll start with my parents, who were both fighters, literally and figuratively, for families. My dad served in World War II, where he was a co-pilot and a bombardier. So he is somebody who put his life on the line, like so many Americans did during World War II, so that we could preserve our freedoms and our democracy. And my mom was a trailblazer because she graduated from law school in the early 1950s. And at the time, this was not something that women did. So she spent a career as a law professor at the University of Connecticut Law School. She was the first female tenured law professor. And at the time, she was one of just a few women who taught law in the country. And she struck up a friendship with another trailblazing woman who you might have heard of, named Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who, like my mom, graduated from law school in the early 1950s. And even though she, like my mom, graduated at the very top of her class, women just couldn't get jobs at private law firms. So like my mom, she ended up teaching law. And my mother, I'll never forget this, my mother would tell me, someday Ruth Bader Ginsburg is going to be on the Supreme Court. And I remember saying to my mom, but Mom, she's been in our backyard for picnics. There's no way she's going to be on the Supreme Court. So the moral of the story is always listen to your mom. But I tell the story about my mom because my mom was someone who fought for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment in Connecticut. And she was someone who fought for women's rights. I remember she took on a case where a teacher was fired because she was 6 months pregnant, and my mom helped her get her job back. So I tell these stories about my parents because I grew up in a family where you were taught to stand up for things that you believe in. And fast forward, I went to law school and was very proud in my high school days to meet Governor Ella Grasso, who was a trailblazer, the first woman elected governor in her own right in the entire country. That happened in 1974. And when Ella Grasso got elected governor of Connecticut, she was on the cover of every news magazine. She was on the cover of Time and Newsweek, and she was even written about in international publications like The Economist, and people in Italy were talking about her because she was the child of Italian immigrants who had an incredible career. She was a state representative. She was Secretary of the State, and she ran for governor and became a trailblazer. No other woman had been elected on their own. There had been several women like Lurleen Wallace who took office after her husband because there were term limits in Alabama. But everybody in Alabama knew that George was still the governor. She sat in the governor's office. His office was down the hall, and people went to see him. So Ella Grasso was someone that I met when I was in high school at a youth and government program. And she's somebody that inspired me to go into politics and public service.
It's an incredible story. It's amazing how the women in our lives shape us. I always say that you probably have heard me say it takes a village, but the women in our life is a significant part of it. And I grew up in Ghana, and my mom was such a strong force. She was the only woman contractor. In fact, there was a street named after her. Like, if you get to the mommy contractor's house, go that way. I remember, in the way that you're remembering, the women that were in your life, just making sure that, whether it was a non-traditional business, but if we loved it, we go into it and encourage us to do it. If you see something wrong, say it. If you love something, don't worry about if it's not a traditional road. Just go after it, and them just believing in us and supporting us and encouraging us to go. So that story is really amazing. Fast forward now, as one of the few women in construction here in America, I can really appreciate the role that you play in inspiring young women. You are one of 22 women lieutenant governors. You're inspiring to the next generation female leaders. You're inspiring to me. You may not know, but you're very inspiring to me. I see what you do, and I said to myself, that is an amazing woman. And just being on the stage representing all of us women is truly important. How important is it for you to motivate young women to pursue leadership and advise on what to do to offer them?
Well, first of all, let me just say, for me, the inspiring part about being in public service is that I get to meet people like you who are doing work that is generally not done by women. So I just want you to know it's a two-way street. And I think it's really important for our girls and young women to see leaders in all kinds of fields, because if they can see that, then perhaps they can see themselves running a construction company like you, or maybe going into politics the way that I've done. I'll tell you that I think one of the things that is emblematic of our administration's commitment to making sure that women and girls are elevated is that the very first official act that Governor Lamont took when we took office in January of 2019, 6 years ago, one of the first things that he did was to create a governor's council on women and girls. And I am the co-chair of that group. And that group is comprised of every one of our commissioners or cabinet level officials. And the responsibility of this group is to make sure that no matter the issue, that we think about the impact on women and girls and use this council to uplift girls and young women, because if you uplift women, you uplift families, you uplift communities, you uplift our state. And so I think that demonstrates how important gender parity and diversity and inclusion is in our administration. And, you know, I'm very proud to tell people that half of our cabinet members are women. Over a third of them are people of color. And our cabinet members are so smart and so talented that Joe Biden has stolen some of our leaders, like Miguel Cardona, to be our National Secretary of Education, or Marian Delphin Rittman to lead the federal Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. So, you know, I think that we lead by example. I am one of 22 lieutenant governors. I will share that the Democratic lieutenant governors are almost exclusively women and people of color. We are a very diverse group of people, and I think it's important to have that diversity, because I think that hopefully it's going to inspire future leaders, whether it's at the local level, whether it's at the state representative level, at the federal level, to go into office. And I will say we also have 12 female governors in our country. We have about 37% of our legislators in Connecticut are women. In the U.S. Congress, though, the number is far less. There are about 25% women in our United States Congress, and there's a 25% women in the U.S. Senate. So we have more work to do, I think, at the federal level. And, you know, I have to say that it was very exciting and historic to be at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago and to be there when Kamala Harris, who will be, in my view, the first African-American woman and Asian-American president. And she also, by the way, was the first African-American and Asian-American vice president and first female vice president. So it was just historic to be in the room, to feel the excitement and enthusiasm. I say room, it was more like an arena. I think there were 25,000 people there. But yeah, it's very exciting and so much more to do.
I would definitely say that you are correct. These are exciting times, and definitely historic. And I'm sure I can speak for everyone here saying that we are really honored to be in these times. Great. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. That. Yes, and I can say I saw you at the convention. You got a little a camera shot during President Obama's speech, as well as when they did the roll call votes. So, it was great.
That was fun. They go state by state, and each state gets to.
That was great fun.
Yeah, gets to highlight their state and cast their votes. And I think there was a flash to Johanna Hayes and I, who were laughing when President Obama said, you know, when people were first rolling out the national health care program, they used to use my name, but now that it's so popular, they stopped calling it Obamacare. So that's when I guess the camera flashed on us and we were laughing at them.
He is so wry and funny.
Indeed.
So shifting a bit to economic development and opportunity in the state, I'd like to talk about how, given that Connecticut cities harbor the poorest neighborhoods and the institutions that serve these communities, including hospitals, shelters, and other services, what more do you feel can be done at the state level to help address not only the lack of housing access, but also resources for these households? And in conjunction with that, what can the state do to help balance out these services among other smaller towns and communities?
So first I'll say, because let's talk about economic development first. So one thing that I noticed during the pandemic was the federal government announced its PPP and EIDL programs to try to help businesses stay afloat in the country. And so a lot of businesses immediately applied. And so as soon as the first round of PPP and EIDL went out, I looked at, okay, who got the money? And what I found was 80% of the businesses that received the money were white-owned, and 80% of the businesses that received the money were male-owned, and almost all of the businesses were larger. So many bells were ringing when I saw that, and I immediately called my friend Fran Pastore, and Fran Pastore is the leader of the Connecticut Women's Small Business Development Center. And I said, Fran, we just got to do something about this. This is ridiculous. We were hearing from our female constituents, women of color, that they were struggling. Many of them owned early childhood education businesses. And we said, we just have to do something. What can we do? So I said, well, I have an idea. I was a banking lawyer in my other life. And I said, I am seeing that these huge banks are making a boatload of money making applications for these businesses, larger businesses, for PPP and EIDL. So I'm going to call up my friends who are leaders in Connecticut banks and ask them to contribute to a fund so that we can start our own fund of grants for women-owned and women of color-owned businesses. And so Fran and I called every bank that operates in Connecticut, and all but one agreed to make significant contributions to this fund. And the governor agreed to match it dollar for dollar. So we had private money matched dollar for dollar. So we started out with $3 million. And we took that money and gave it to qualified businesses owned by women. And we prioritized businesses owned by women of color in disadvantaged areas, like Alliance school districts, for example. So your medium-sized and large cities. And we gave grants, not loans, because we listened to people and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to add more debt. So we gave $2,500 to $10,000 grants to people from that $3 million. That has become so popular that we continue to raise money, and the state continues to help match. And that program has been wildly successful. And I don't have the figures in front of me, but it has helped create thousands of jobs. It has increased revenue up to over 50% in a lot of the businesses that got them, and enabled businesses that were hanging on by a thread to stay open. So and our administration continues to support small businesses through our small business boost fund, and we try to do everything based on an equity lens, because that is so very important. You asked about housing. I think economic development and housing access are linked. Right now, we have about 90,000 to 100,000 open jobs on any given day. And at the same time, we need 100,000 more affordable housing units. So it's not an accident that those are related. And if we want our economy to grow, we have to have places for people to live. And we have housing deserts in different parts of the state, from eastern Connecticut to everywhere you look. It doesn't matter the part of the state. And I think one of the reasons is a lot of people moved to Connecticut during the pandemic and decided to stay. So housing stock was decreased. Whatever was on the market quickly got bought up. And also now our economy is cranking. We have an extremely low unemployment rate, yet we still have 100,000 open jobs. So we have to attract people from outside of our state. And hopefully a lot of those are, college students wanting to come back to Connecticut and live. And so to do that, we need all kinds of housing. And, that's why we've put forward a Time to Own program to try to help first-time home buyers by cutting the closing costs and making sure that young people and first-time home buyers can buy homes. We are also trying to incentivize those that are building housing to include affordable units, and we especially incentivize that activity when it's near public transportation. And there are certain cities that are doing a fabulous job of that: Norwalk, Milford, Meriden, New Haven, Stamford. In Norwalk, you could stand at the train station in Norwalk and be able to walk a quarter of a mile to thousands of different housing units, right? Norwalk, they are doing transit-oriented development really well. But transit-oriented development is happening in small towns too, and I'll give you an example. So there is a old factory in Windsor Locks that has been turned into beautiful, beautiful housing. And there are affordable units. There are units that empty nesters and young professionals are staying in, and they are just a few hundred feet from the train station in Windsor Locks, the very same train station that Ella Grasso went to on her inauguration day and took the train to Hartford. And I know that we should be encouraging this kind of housing development because I know young people don't like to have cars. I have two kids who live in New York City, and they take the subway everywhere, and they would think having a car is a burden. And they like being able to take public transportation. And so we are continuing to try to encourage that kind of housing, and we do it through our Department of Housing, and we've allocated over $900 million in investment to try to build up our affordable housing stock in the state.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I was involved in one of the developments in Meriden, one of the TODs there, and I'm working on one in Enfield as we speak. So it's very exciting and is really important to, I think, building back some of these smaller cities where where the city core has seen a lot of disinvestment over time, and this is one of the ways in which we can start to bring it back. So,
and I will add to that by saying that we also have been giving millions of dollars in brownfield remediation grants. The idea that those grants are given to communities who want to build affordable housing where there's an economic development component that's near public transportation. I'll give you a couple more examples of great projects that are happening through either brownfield remediation or community investment fund activity. New London is a fantastic example. Every time I go there, there's new housing that's being built right in the beautiful downtown area. And that's very exciting. I think Mayor Mike Passero is doing a fantastic job making sure that development is happening in New London. A lot of new housing being built there. And Middletown, my hometown, is an example of a place where there was a community investment grant made in Middletown where a young couple of color bought what used to be a professional office building, and they gutted the interior of it. It's a pretty large space, and there was a roller rink behind it. And what they are doing is they are making a business incubator space on the bottom floor for small businesses, and the top 3 or 4 floors is going to go toward affordable and workforce housing. And the former roller rink that was behind the building is going to become stalls for farmers market and also for artists and craftsmen, craftspeople, and artisans that maybe do not have a brick and mortar space, but they'll be able to sell their products. So these are examples of creative things, and all this is happening on Main Street in Middletown on public transportation routes in an area where hopefully more economic development will be stirred. And what we love is using old buildings and repurposing them. And this is now a discussion, for instance, that leaders in Hartford are having about now that so many big companies need less office space because people are used to spending several days a week working from home. How do we repurpose that space? And it seems to me the best way to repurpose the space is convert buildings in Hartford that aren't being used for office space for housing, if you can, or encouraging businesses that might be in Class C or Class B office space to move to the Class A space and then take those existing smaller buildings and turn those into housing. There's a lot going on in terms of housing in downtown Hartford too, and that's very exciting to see.
That is. Thanks.
I just want to say one thing before, Jimmy, you ask your question. So Susan, the work that you talked about with Fran and the PPP and the Boost Fund, Vase, my company, benefited from it. Although it was in a small portion, I would tell you that from that time where my business is and from now, it's a significant improvement. And it's been such an improvement that we even no longer qualify for certain amount of these grants because our business have exceeded the type of business that by revenue. So, but I believe that if it wasn't for that support for us women and minority businesses, I would not have been able to take that small seed money and expand it in such a way that we no longer qualify for the program. It's a good thing we don't qualify for the program because of the fact that our business have exceeded the threshold of what they consider small. And
that was the point. And that's why I said to earlier that that program, the Equity Match Grant Program, now we call it the Ignite Grant Program, which anybody listening or watching should check it out. That is so important because it's helped companies get to the next levels, right? That's the point. We wanted to encourage people to hire more people, to grow their client base, to grow their revenues. And you are just one of many examples.
It works.
Yeah, it does work. It does work. And I tell everybody who, I don't care if you're a woman or a man that owns a business, get on the Women's Business Development Council email list, because when new state or federal or local economic development programs are launched, you'll be aware of what those are, because during COVID, it wasn't just the federal government, it wasn't just the state government that had programs. A lot of towns and cities took ARPA money and had their own grant program. So please, if you're not on the Women's Business Development Council email list, they're based in Stamford. They have offices all over Connecticut, one in New London. They're opening one in Hartford. They have one in New Haven, and their home base is in Stamford. So check them out. They have fantastic business advisors that will help you do anything from apply for one of these Ignite grants to writing a business plan to helping you with whatever you need to be successful. I can't say enough good things about it. And thank you for being an ambassador for them.
Oh, yes. I have benefited way more than they've given me. I have an amazing counselor. Even though my business is pretty mature, I still benefit in such a tremendous way. So I agree with you. Anybody watching this, we're going to put these links also on this podcast so that women and girls and minorities that can go and all the different resources so that they can see where it is.
All right. Good afternoon, Lieutenant Governor.
Hello. Good afternoon.
My question has to do with health care. I've been working in housing and community development for almost 50 years. And one of the things that has piqued my interest has been the disparity in health care between affluent communities and lower income communities. Asthma, high blood pressure, strokes, obesity, all are more prevalent in lower income communities. So my question is, what is the state doing to help address this disparity, these disparities?
Okay, so a couple of things. So we have Access Health Connecticut, which is the federal access health program, or Obamacare. So that is available for folks. Also, we have been expanding access to state-funded healthcare programs for children because it's really important that we start kids off right. And we also have announced a Connecticut student loan repayment program where our state is going to help with student loan repayments for healthcare providers who want to commit to practicing full-time in underserved communities. I think one thing that we have in our state that a lot of states do not have is we have a system of federally qualified community health centers, and the community health centers of Connecticut. And these places are amazing. And I have gone there to get flu shots, to get COVID shots, and for healthcare because they're fantastic. And when they accept patients and they take anyone, they will do what they can to try to sign up an individual or a family for whatever healthcare programs might be available to them, whether it's Husky A or B, whether it's Medicaid, whatever it is, they will try to not only take care of your healthcare needs, but try to get you the health coverage that you need. And I can't say enough about that. I will say, though, too, that we are a state of great wealth and we are a state of great poverty. And we do have some healthcare deserts. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One is that in Eastern Connecticut, Wyndham Hospital has stopped providing maternity care. And that's a problem because if you live in Wyndham and, you need to have an emergency C-section, you're going to have to go by car to Manchester Hospital or somewhere else outside of Wyndham to get that care. And that is a problem. Sharon Hospital, which is in the northwestern part of the state, recently decided to keep their maternity services going. And I was delighted to hear that because that is another example of a healthcare desert. So we, I think, still have work to do to ensure that everyone has access to care. And I will tell you that we have very, very ardent advocates in so many legislators. I'll just give you some examples of them. Kristen McCarthy-Vahey, who's a state representative from Fairfield, who co-chairs the Public Health Committee. Senator May Flexor, who's been very vocal about making sure that women have the health services they need in her part of the state, which is Eastern Connecticut. And there's always more to do, but I just want to say our community health centers and federally qualified health centers, which are mainly in some of the cities, Danbury, Meriden, Enfield, Bridgeport, New Haven, our generations in Wyndham are really, really important, and they are great at taking care of people all over our state.
Slightly different but connected question. Talking about environmental health disparities, air pollution, water pollution, lead-based paint. What is the state doing in the area of environmental health?
So this is something that is going to be more and more important because we are seeing the effects of climate change. We saw it this summer. It was just hotter, muggier, more humid. And, this is a problem when people in urban areas who don't have air conditioning, especially elderly people, are having difficulty breathing. And so we have been trying to attack this in a number of ways. One is that we recently launched a Lead-Free Connecticut campaign because one problem is in urban areas you have a lot of kids and adults exposed to lead paint. And so there is an abatement program that is going to be using federal ARPA dollars to help remove lead from homes and from family childcare settings. So that's something really important that the Department of Public Health is doing. Also, we have started the process of banning PFAS in certain products. And PFAS is a forever chemical that has been causing cancer in firefighters, because PFAS was in firefighting suits and also in foam used to fight fires. So that's something that I think is really important. We've also given our Department of Energy and Environment a greater power to purchase clean energy from wind and water power as well. And one thing that will be good, if you go to New London now, you can see that wind turbines are being constructed in New London. They will be put offshore, and they're going to help make Connecticut's energy 93% carbon free, combined with our nuclear power when all those turbines are up and running. I would have liked to see the same be put up off the coast of Bridgeport. That was a project that was supposed to happen. It fizzled. That's too bad because our nuclear power plants aren't going to last forever. And, so my question is, when nuclear power plants are past their useful life, then what do we do? And I think, wind can be and solar can be a big part of the answer. The other thing is I would like to see more towns and cities be tree cities. And to be designated a tree city, your city or town has to have an arborist or an arbor commission and has to plant a certain number of trees every year. And the great thing about trees is they naturally clean the air, they provide shade, they reduce crime, they increase property values, and they help fight climate change. So in Middletown, 100,000 trees are planted every year. So trees are everywhere. They're on our main streets. They're on our residential streets. They're near public housing, public buildings. And it makes everything prettier. It makes everything cooler. And it makes everyone's property values higher. So any mayors and first selectmen out there, please, become a tree city, because you will be doing something very important to help fight climate change.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's amazing. We can talk to you forever and ever and ever, because first of all, your story is fascinating, and there's just so much we can learn from, and so much our listeners can learn from. And we hope that, we can get you to come back again in the next few months. So I will go into the last question,
Okay.
so that, we can, be cautious of your time. We appreciate your insights of this episode so far. I think we've tackled on about 5 or 6, different or critical topics, and all of the links that we're going to share, we hope that will help our audience that are listening here in the States and also across the border. So with that being said, when you look back at your tenure as a Lieutenant Governor, what do you hope your legacy would be?
Well, I am continuing to work hard every day. I will say that there are 2 things that we have done in our administration that I think have been hugely impactful. One is raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour with an inflationary trigger every year. And the reason that's important is there are more than 170,000 women who are the main breadwinner for their family. And they are women that make minimum wage. And there is a myth that it's only teenagers that work for minimum wages, and it's just not true. And so by providing that raise from, it was $10 when we took office, and it's gone up every year. So it's now $15.69, that has uplifted 170,000 families headed by women in our state. And the other, I think, really impactful thing has been the passage of paid family leave, which says that you can take time off to take care of your health. If you have cancer, if you've had surgery and you need time to recover, if you're having a baby, if you have a spouse with health issues, you have a child with health issues, that you can take care of your health or your family's without fear of losing your job, and you have income that you are able to get while you are not working. And this is a privately funded program because a small percentage of your paycheck is taken out, so that if you ever have to welcome a baby, take care of yourself or a sick family member, that you have the opportunity to do that and not worry about losing your job or not being able to pay your rent or your mortgage. And that program has enabled 150,000 families to welcome a new baby, take care of a sick relative. I think that's game changing, and that is one of the reasons that Connecticut is known as one of the most family friendly and female friendly states in the country.
What is the program called?
Paid family leave.
Paid family, okay.
And we have a paid family leave authority that is in charge of making sure that the benefits are paid to those qualified applicants that apply.
Can businesses like myself work with the agency for my employees?
Oh, absolutely. So if your business isn't signed up, you should.
Yes. I'm glad we're doing this, because I did not know.
There you go.
I have a daughter who happens to live in Denver, and she was able to access the family medical leave program out there, which was really important for her when she was dealing with an illness this year. So it is a game changer. That's really significant.
Yep. And I've heard from young people who said they came to Connecticut because we had the paid leave program. So
that's terrific.
Yep. So we
need more young people coming back to Connecticut.
We sure do.
Good.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today, Susan.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time. We love having you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us and listening to today's episode of YIMBY Nation. Continue the conversation in your communities and on social using hashtag YIMBY Nation. Connect with V at www.vaseconstruction.com. Connect with Jimmy at www.sincereconsulting.com. And connect with Peter by searching Collaborative Development Consulting on LinkedIn.com. Please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform so we can continue helping communities thrive. Email us at contact@yimbynation.com or visit the podcast website at www.yimbynation.com. Until next time.